Ladies and gentlemen, your favorite sports podcast is back and here for you. The biggest game of the season has concluded. The NFL season itself has concluded. And despite the sadness in our heart that we're not going to get football for a while unless you're going to watch the XFL and the USFL, which who's going to do that? I can't even make the joke. We're not. Are we going to watch a single game this season of either league, Justin?
I'm always down to give football a shot. I gave the USFL a shot when it first came out. I think I watched the first game of each season, and then I don't know. It's just hard to get into the routine. Is it even the same? Do they even have the same weekly schedule as the NFL does? Like they play football once a week?
I think so for the most part. I have to double check. Clearly, two people that Yeah, clearly people that know exactly what they're talking about with those two leagues. XFL and USFL podcast, we are not, ladies and gentlemen, but we are an NFL-based podcast. And as you can tell, we have a massive game that we're going to talk about from the title of this episode. But welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos. As always, joining myself, Iceman Jerry, is one of my compatriots of chaos, Justin. Many names that I could say that have the word Zuck at the front of it. Zuck. Justin, how we doing?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Always good, brother. Always good, especially doing the show with you. And I would also say Podfather Rick, and it is always good doing with Rick, but the Podfather is out of action this week. He is unable to join us. But, people who are familiar with this already know. Just because he's not here right now doesn't mean we're not going to get a little bit of Podfather sprinkled in throughout the rest of this episode. So just take a back seat, ladies and gentlemen. So, guys, I've already said it. I've already kind of alluded to it. Let's be real with it. The Super Bowl is over. The biggest game of the year happened. The Kansas City Chiefs ended up winning the Super Bowl. We're going to talk about the game itself. We're going to talk about basically our breakdown of it, what happened, the Chiefs falling down, the Chiefs comeback, a certain final play that happened, or final penalty that was called that merits a little bit of discussion, I feel. And we're going to be just doing a deep dive into the Super Bowl, or as I like calling it, the Superb Owl today. Along with that, we're actually going to start a very small bit of off-season talk, predominantly with a certain quarterback that is no longer on his team, ladies and gentlemen. I, of course, am talking about Jameis Winston. No, I'm kidding. I think Jameis only signed a one-year deal with the Saints. That's why I said I just pulled his name out. I don't know if he's a free agent or not. He might.
I don't think so.
No?
No, I think it was a multi-year deal.
Was it? To be fair. Andy Dalton. But in all seriousness, Derek Carr is no longer a Las Vegas Raider. Where will he go? What will Vegas do? We're going to have a little bit of discourse about that later on in the episode, of course, after the big talk, of course. And, guys, there's going to be a random podium spoiler alert on that. So, with that being said, let's start the show. As you guys always know, the tagline of the show. It is fun, football, and chaos. And we're going to start with a little bit of fun. We do have some trivia for you guys. But before we get to the trivia, I've already kind of made note to it multiple times, but the Podfather is here for us. He never goes away. So let's see what his mind-blowing fact of this week was.
Mark here. Remember how a few weeks ago I said that we live on a very wonderful planet and that people who are crazy should, focus on the things that are wonderful? Well, I may have lied about that, because here's your mind-blowing fact of the week. Malcolm in the Middle is now a stock car driver. Yeah. Frankie Muniz is now driving in the ARCA series, and their first race was today, if we're recording this on Saturday. If not today, then Saturday, at Daytona, where he was one of the Grand Marshals and in the pace car back in 2001 for the Daytona 500. Yep, Frankie Muniz, the actor from Miracle in Lane 2 and Malcolm in the Middle and Agent Cody Banks, he's now racing stock cars in the ARCA series. I had no hope for humanity anymore. That's your mind-blowing fact of the week. Goodbye.
See, again, best part about the mind-blowing fact, it doesn't need to do with sports or football in any way, shape, or form.
All right.
All right. I really want to know, this is a rabbit hole that we could, if we bring this up, I'm sure once Rick sees this, he's going to go down this rabbit hole himself. But what, I guess, I don't know about child stars, but what kids that were in popular TV shows that we watched growing up or that Rick watched growing up are now, what random things are they doing? We should make that a weekly segment almost, I feel like, Justin.
Yeah.
Where are they now? 90, 80s and 90s. I'm saying 80s because I'm sure Rick can mention a bunch of the 80s shows as well. 80s and 90s, television, childhood TV stars edition. Where are
this show's just going to turn into something else this offseason, huh?
Probably.
Harry Potter, random facts. Where are they now? Woo.
Yes. This is still a football podcast, ladies and gentlemen, allegedly.
So you're gonna leave me in the dust. That's all I know about.
so as the show evolves, we'll see if Justin can keep up with it. Speaking of keeping up with it, let's go to some more games here. Thank you, Rick, for your mind-blowing fact of the week. We always appreciate you, Podfather. Can't wait for you to come back next week. Let's go to a little bit of trivia that without Rick, I'm probably going to get this one wrong. So let hit me with some trivia, Justin.
I tried to gear it towards you, Jerk. So let's see if you can get it. Who made the most field goals this season?
I feel like we've talked about this on the show so many times, but I've definitely forgotten. Oh my goodness! All right, most field goals this season. I just have the ticker first off. All right. Okay. So it's got to be a team that they were able to finish their offensive drives a good chunk of the time. It's got to be, in my mind, one of the higher scoring teams.
I was going to say, it would be the opposite. It's teams that couldn't finish their scoring drives because they ended up with field goals.
So when I say that, I also count a scoring drive with a field goal. So that means
but when you're finishing a drive, that's to me that's a touchdown.
Yeah. All right. So the first couple of guys, like, see, I think the thing with this is that I rule out some of the more known kickers around the league because their quarterbacks are so good. So there's Lamar Jackson on the Ravens, so it's probably not Justin Tucker. Harrison Butker with the Chiefs because of Mahomes being there. Definitely a lot of point after attempts, but
Butker also missed some time this year. He was hurt.
That too. So it's one of those things to consider where, you know, you may not go with the highest quality team with the quarterback, but if you maybe take that next tier down where the quarterback is good, but still had a lot of field goals. And I'm trying to think of like that next tier of quarterback and trying to correlate that with the team. So definitely not the Tennessee Titans. I'm not gonna lie, the Minnesota Vikings kind of come to mind because Kirk Cousins is but they did a good chunk of scoring this year. That's part of the reason why they became a fraudulent, third seed. You had to at least get some field goals in these games. The Raiders definitely come to mind, I think, with Josh Jacobs and Derek Carr. They definitely got towards the end zone a lot, but how many times did they finish? I think I could have sworn we mentioned Gabriel Carlson earlier this season as well. I think that was more so because of his 50-plus yard kicks, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he did. I think he broke the record for most 50-yard field goals.
Yeah, so there's that aspect of it. At the same time, though, I'm sure he had plenty of other field goals there. So this is where it gets tricky. So now what is my answer? I'm probably going to get this wrong, and I want to apologize to the brand for getting this wrong. So my first guess will be, just because I know he's got the 50-plus yard kicks, I'm sure he had to have a good amount closer to it as well. My first guess will be Gabriel Carlson of the Las Vegas Raiders.
Daniel Carlson.
Why did I think, I don't know. Gabriel Carlson, hold on. There's a hockey player named Gabriel Carlson. That's why. Daniel Carlson. That's hockey on the brain. Ryan O'Reilly got traded last night. Hockey's going up, but no.
So Daniel Carlson, if the question was most 50-yard field goals made or if it most 50-yard field goals attempted, he is the answer for both. However, he is number 2 on this list with 34 made field goals.
I was close.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I have to think to myself.
By the way, automatic from anything under 40 yards. He only missed 1 40 to 49 yarder and 2 50-plus. Very good year.
Okay, I'm trying to think here. So again, I want to stick with that next tier of of like teams with quarterbacks. Is it? No. Well, because the Lions did a lot of scoring this year. They had a lot of high-scoring games.
This year, yeah.
And like Jared Goff had a pretty good season. He had a lot of yards. So I would think, now they did finish a lot of touchdown drives, right? Like Jamal Williams was a beast, as we spoke about, was it last week or the week before, that Jamal Williams had what was it, 14 rushing touchdowns this season, 13 or 14?
Yeah, he had a lot.
He was a monster. So yes, they finished a lot. At the same time, though, they had some shootouts earlier in the season, and they were close to the playoffs. And I gotta think that the Lions have a chance of being up there. Now, I'm just trying to remember to myself how many field goals did they have to take versus being able to finish off with touchdowns. Because I wish I knew what Jared Goff's passing touchdown number was off the top of my head. Because again, Derek Carr, he didn't have a supreme amount of touchdowns passing. So that's part of the reason why you correlate it with get to the end zone a lot.
Yeah, they would get close and then they'd stall.
Exactly. So I think I don't know why it's these NFC North teams. I think the Lions and the Vikings are the top two teams in my brain right now. So, I guess let's see if the frauds can help me out here. I will go with the Minnesota Vikings, and I believe their kicker is Greg Joseph, right?
I believe you are correct. And Greg Joseph made 26 field goals.
Oh, that's nowhere near.
No, he was not even close.
Dang.
Yeah.
They must have been way more efficient than I thought.
And I'll give it to you. I believe the Lions kicker is Riley Patterson, correct?
I thought it was Hansen. Or am I confused?
Oh, Patterson was for the Jaguars. He's also not in the top.
Really? Okay. Wow. All right. Huh. See, because the number one name that keeps coming to mind is Justin Tucker, but I know it can't be him because they had Lamar for so much of the season. But at the end, they did kind of have to settle for field goals. Man, this is tough. This is tough. I really just got to start looking at like the end of season stats from now on to prepare for this trivia, just in case. Who had to settle for so many field goals? Because I really am just trying to think of a team that couldn't do it. Also, but we do need to get the show rolling here. So I guess give me one minute. Wait, hold on. No, but their quarterback had a career year.
Who?
I was thinking the Seahawks, but future Ring of Honor Geno Smith.
That's funny. I was actually thinking about hinting towards that. That doesn't necessarily make it the right answer.
I was gonna say. Oh my god. Because I'm just eliminating teams in my head that were really bad, so they can't be in this. Like, can't be the Cardinals, can't be the Texans. It can't be the Bears. So I'm getting rid of like those teams. No, it can't be the Eagles because again, Jalen Hurts with his legs plus passing plus their running game of the season. I don't think it could be them. Jake Elliott's good, but like I don't think it could be them.
It wasn't. They scored so many touchdowns this year.
Yeah, that's one thing. They scored so many touchdowns that Jake Elliott. I'm sure he had a really good field goal percentage, but he didn't need to take a lot. God, this is tough. Wait. Okay, I could be wrong here. But this team struggled with quarterback play this season. At the same time, though, they were a good team. They nearly made the playoffs. But I feel like you guys criticized him a lot this season, so I actually don't know. Was it? No. I'm having a similar.
Yes,
I'm having a similar reaction to Rick here. No, it couldn't have been. It couldn't have been Greg the Leg. Couldn't have been Zerline. You guys criticized him way too much. There's no way it could be Greg Zerline.
it was not Greg Zerline.
Okay, all right.
You don't have to guess. Greg Zerline, top 10.
Really?
He
Wow.
made 30, but he missed 7.
Yeah.
30 of 37.
Did he have a bad week that I'm just remembering you and Rick specifically being like?
There was one week I think where he missed a couple, but I also think that it might have been like a bad weather game or a game that they were like they shouldn't have been in position for him to kick long field goals. He ended up kicking
because he can't kick it anymore, right?
No, he doesn't have the distance anymore. He was 5 for 10 for anything over 50 yards, and he was 9 of 11 in that 40 to 49 yard range. Everything before that, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he really started to miss after at the 50 yarders.
That's disappointing, eh? That's
Did make a
disappointing.
60.
There you go.
Throwing it out there, but
All right. I'm just going to go old reliable because I can't think of it anymore. And it makes sense because Lamar Jackson got hurt. Is it our old buddy
it
in Baltimore?
is, Jurg.
Okay.
Only one letter difference from my own name, Justin Tucker.
I thought it was going to be too obvious. Like, I thought, like, okay,
I
Justin
know that
Tucker.
was the whole point. It was like a trick question, even though it wasn't.
Thank you. Hey, I got it at the end of the
37
day.
field goals made.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who was the next closest?
Daniel
I know
Carlson and
Carlson.
Jason Myers.
Jason Myers.
34.
Wow. Nice. Good for Jason Myers. Good for
Yeah.
him. Happy
Jason
for him.
Myers also had an excellent season, 34 of 37. He missed 1 inside the 30-yard range and 2 inside the 40. 6 for 6 on field goals over 50 yards.
Wow. That's got to be the next evolution? Just guys who could just kick 50-yard bombs, right? that's got to be it.
There are lots of guys that could do it like on command as long as you don't have 11 guys rushing at you. You know what I mean?
Fair enough. All right. Well, I've conquered the trivia question this week. Rick, I hope I made you proud. I mean, I took probably way more time than I should have, but at the same time, I did my best.
To come up with Justin Tucker.
yeah, right? To come up with the most obvious answer, it took me like 10 minutes. I mean, to be fair, there are a good amount of kickers in the league, but it's like I guess part of it is because I underestimated how much time Lamar Jackson missed this season. I think that's probably why. Because I don't know if this is the same with you, Justin. Like, started a bit more than what I thought he did this season.
I have no idea what you just said, man. The whole thing just broke up.
Oh, you absolutely love it. Xfinity being clutch. No, what I would say is that I was surprised. I think part of the reason why I stayed away is because I was surprised because I thought Lamar maybe played more than what he really did.
Yeah,
and I guess I underestimated how much he missed and maybe overestimated, or maybe I'm confusing it. But I did remember how much Tyler Huntley actually played, and that Baltimore had to kick a lot of field goals there at the end of the season.
Yeah, he had it's funny because Lamar he started off so strong. I mean, he was the first 5 games, he was the easy MVP candidate. He was killing it.
Absolutely.
And then only finished with 17 passing touchdowns. He missed a lot of games this year.
Yeah.
So let's see, he missed the last 5 games.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. They really tell. You said how many did he finish passing touchdown wise? You said 17. Jesus Christ.
And he had 10 in the first 3 weeks.
Oh my God. So only 7 to end it. Whew.
Yeah.
Well, that offense really did sputter because what's his name? Duvernay was no longer a threat because there was a game early in the season where he caught 2 long bombs and then just basically disappeared. Rashad Bateman had a moment or two early in the season, but I did not hear his name at all after. Mark Andrews was fine, but you can only do so much when your franchise quarterback gets hurt, and then it's Tyler freaking Huntley.
Mark Andrews was also injured a lot of the year. He was in and out. Isaiah Likely stepped up in his stead, though.
Well, you think that we could see double the turnover in Baltimore? You think Mark Andrews could be out of there if there's no more Lamar?
It depends on how much time he has left in his contract. If they trade Lamar before the season, here's the thing, because they were winning games with Brent Huntley. Tyler. They played well in that playoff, whatever. They played well with Huntley in that playoff game as well. So, I mean, obviously, you're not going to beat the Bengals that way. You're not going to really make it far. But if you have a healthier team and you have a guy like Mark Andrews there that can block and catch the ball, you can put Likely on the other side, might not make sense to trade him for what you're trying to scheme to do. But that being said, without Lamar there, if they end up losing Lamar, I think you're going to see major turnover.
Yeah.
At the end of the season, if they don't make the playoffs.
Agreed.
If they miss the playoffs and traded Lamar, you'll probably see new coaching. You might see a new GM.
Yeah.
There's going to be a mass access of players.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what direction that team goes in.
Absolutely. And for the sake of it, looked it up. Mark Andrews, 3 years left on his contract. A potential out after after this upcoming season. This season,
rookie deal or no?
No. This is an extension that he signed a couple years ago. This is the second year in a 4-year, $56 million extension. His dead cap hit this season is $25 million versus a 13.65 cap hit. So probably
They're not going to cut him. If anything, they'll trade him. They'll get something from Mark Andrews.
Oh yeah, for sure. For premier tight end in this league, I'm sure there are plenty of takers for that, without question. So
absolutely,
that'll be something interesting to see. Hey, we started offseason talk even earlier than what we thought, ladies and gentlemen. But yes, that is the beginning of that amazing trivia, Justin. Good stuff on that. And early offseason talk. Where will Lamar Jackson go? It's 4 weeks down the line. We'll figure it out eventually. We'll probably figure it out before the Baltimore Ravens do. That I'm kidding, of course. But another fantastic round of games, Justin. We're going to save a little bit more of the fun for when Rick returns, guys, because let's be real here. It's more fun, especially for Justin, to see me and Rick disagree on whatever his would you rather and fact or fiction are.
Love it. My favorite part of the day.
So let's get on with it, shall we, guys? You already know why we're here. You already know what we're here to talk about mainly. The Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Philadelphia Eagles 38-35 to win the 57th Super Bowl of all time. Just absolutely amazing stuff in that game. And before we really break it down, guys, you know why we're here. You know what I'm leading up to.
57 is in the books. And you know what? It was a pretty good game for all things considered. I mean, we knew the Eagles were going to go in and be the team that they were on offense. We had a feeling about that. The real question was going to be, what was Kansas City going to do on offense to that vaunted Eagles D? And Pat Mahomes, he did a good job. Of course, look, there was a couple of things that went their way. The Sky Moore punt return was electric. And I feel like we had talked about Sky Moore in that mold at some point. I think, maybe it was Jurg who picked Sky Moore to the Chiefs or whoever it was at the very end. But hey, we talk about these guys all the time, and look what they're doing. They're doing a lot of great work in the NFL. So there was a Sky Jones punt return. The Nick Bolton fumble return for a touchdown was a nice little setup. The Eagles kind of showed a little bit of their naivete and their newness to a Super Bowl and to a big stage like that in this regard. There were some plays where I think they could have done a lot better, and there were some things that I think we saw that, a team like the Eagles, if they are built and constituted the right way, they'll be back next year. For Kansas City, you can't say anything other than a dynasty for this team. I mean, the way that they rallied around Mahomes and the way that they rallied around the fact that they had great players and, really stuck it to the Eagles on defense in the final few drives and really had a nice comeback, I think, was excellent. Made for a great game. Now, there's going to be questions about the call at the very end, and, rightfully so. How do you go the whole game long and call that holding penalty at that point in time? Well, look, I think, it's a matter of just a bang-bang. And so what are you going to do? Tell the refs, hey, you can't throw a flag with 2 minutes left to go? That's when you get into jail ball. That's when you get into street ball. So it's not really going to do you any good. So was it an anticlimactic way to end the game? Sure, absolutely. But I think that, it was a matter of just... Even Chase Bradbury, he even said it. Look, I held him, and it's a holding call. That's the letter of the law is holding. So... Kansas City wins an anticlimactic finish to what was a really good game. Chiefs are Super Bowl champions, and Philadelphia, I think, is still standing, but I think that might be about to change. We'll see.
So can confirm the city of Philadelphia is still on the map. So pretty sure they're fine there, even despite the heartbreaking loss. There was a funny video actually. I think it was somebody on was it the Magic or the Rockets? I want to say it was the Houston Rockets. I think it was Jabari Smith, who he was in the hotel. He was like high above in the hotel, and he freaking like looked out his window and just was recording on his phone. And it was basically like he didn't yell at the fans directly, but he was like, "Yo, can y'all just like chill after losing the Super Bowl?" He's like, "I got to guard Embiid tomorrow. Can y'all not?" So that was a pretty funny video actually. In response, yes, the Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Philadelphia Eagles in what was a very entertaining Super Bowl, honestly, Justin. We did our top 5 Super Bowls last week. I may have to revisit my top 5 because this game is certainly in there, at least for myself personally. This was a great back and forth game between these two sides, high scoring, which I really like, and it wasn't the kind of high scoring where they're like the comeback itself is super special, and that's why the Patriots-Falcons Super Bowl was up there for me for my number 1, but this was a high-scoring game where no team, I think the largest lead we saw at any point in this one was just a 10-point lead. It didn't become that 20-point blowout that we were seeing the miraculous comeback for. And that's part of the reason why I think it was really great. But to the game in and of itself, both teams scored on their opening drives with a Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown. after it was the Kenneth Gainwell touchdown was called off, which I know pissed a lot of people off that bet on him to get the first score of the game. But Jalen Hurts with the rushing touchdown. Travis Kelce, it was an absolute dart from Mahomes to Kelce on that one with a 18-yard pass to him in the end zone for the tutty. So for the fact that both teams scored on their opening drive in and of itself was awesome. And then the Eagles quickly responded with A.J. Brown. He had a very, kind of not similar, but A.J. Brown had a monster 45-yard catch later on early in the second quarter here. And I say early, it feels like, kind of jumping around, but that was the case in this first half. We saw the Eagles really hold the ball against the Kansas City Chiefs for a vast majority of the first half here, Justin. It was a very similar game plan to what the 49ers did. Ironically, the Eagles beating the 49ers in the NFC title game. But it's very similar to what San Fran did to Kansas City those a couple of years ago in their Super Bowl. They limited how much and how often the Chiefs had the ball. And it really worked in the first half to where, Kansas City, they only had one offensive touchdown in that first half. They didn't get the ball. How many possessions did they have? Maybe, I think, 3? It was a keep away game. And that's basically what you do against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. You have to play keep away. You have to try to get them off the field when they are, and you try to milk the clock as much as you can while still trying to score on offense. And that's exactly what the Philadelphia Eagles were able to do. Of course, before they were really able to take too big of a lead, Nick Bolton, like Rick mentioned, this was, I think, the big turning point in the first half, and what was able to really keep Kansas City in this game was that Nick Bolton fumble recovery. Absolutely monster moment right there for the Kansas City Chiefs. That one tied up the game. The Eagles were able to respond. Again, this was one of those questions where we wondered about Philly because of their newness to this kind of stage for a lot of the guys on that team. How would they respond to that kind of moment? And they responded in kind. Jalen Hurts finishing things off with a 4-yard rushing touchdown. That was his second touchdown of the game. They were able to force a 3-and-out late by KC, and then at the end of it, it was a Jake Elliott field goal to beat the buzzer in the first half, and they took a 10-point lead. That was the first half. The second half, that was a story in and of itself. But before we get to the second half, I say we're gonna break this down for a reason because I think it warrants discussion. So, Justin, the first half of this game, what was your reaction come halftime, before the Rihanna halftime show that broke Twitter? Literally, Twitter was not loading for a good 10, 15, 20 minutes. But, going into the first half, Eagles up by 10. What were your thoughts at that point of the game?
I was surprised. Look, I knew the Eagles were a good team. I didn't expect them to be up double digits at halftime. It's interesting because you're right. The time of possession battle was a major factor. I will say, to the Chiefs' credit, it's very difficult to win the time of possession battle in a half where you scored a defensive touchdown. It's just, it skews the stat to an extent. But, I mean, still, there was, 3 drives that they didn't score on in that first half. I think one of them was a 3-and-out. So the Eagles played a great game in the first half and, certainly made up for an exciting second half.
Absolutely. And part of the reason why I do mention the Nick Bolton score was because that was really the saving grace in a first half that the Chiefs just didn't get to touch the ball a lot. And again, that's been the formula to defeat them. We've seen it multiple times over the regular seasons. I feel like the Colts beat the Kansas City Chiefs with this strategy alone the last couple of regular seasons that they faced. It's been a very interesting one, to say the least. But yes, 24-14. I was thinking a similar thing to you. I picked the Eagles on the show last week. I kind of said my logic because I always go, it's always opposite for me. So I wanted to see the Chiefs win, so that's why I picked the Eagles. So you're welcome right there, Kansas City. I'm sorry, Philadelphia. Nothing personal, all business. But let's go to the third quarter. Kansas City Chiefs respond as quick as they can. I think that first drive was really massive. I believe that was a drive where Jerick McKinnon lined up in the fullback slot, and he just took it for I think 10 to at least 10 yards on a carry. That was big. There were some big contributions. I know Rick mentioned it with some of the guys here, the Sky Moore, both Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney, both catching passing touchdowns in the fourth quarter. We'll get that a little bit. But really, it was the running game. It was Pacheco and McKinnon that did the work on that first touchdown drive of the second half for the Chiefs. And I say first touchdown / scoring drive, guys, because the Chiefs were perfect in the second half. They barely got the ball in the first half. Well, they made it count when it mattered most. They were perfect in the second half on their scoring drives, starting in the second half with that Isaiah Pacheco 1-yard rush, like I mentioned. Philly only able to respond with a field goal. And in this one, and Justin, you agree with this, we've seen this. If you're going to beat Kansas City, you need to score touchdowns. Field goals are fine. Yes, they add to your score. but you cannot beat Patrick Mahomes with field goals unless it's at the very final second at the end of the game. But you cannot beat the Kansas City Chiefs with field goals. You cannot beat Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid with field goals. You need to beat them with touchdowns. So I felt a bit of a missed opportunity on the Jake Elliott one. Correct me if I'm wrong, because this happened twice in the second half where it was reviewed, or at least maybe it was late first half, early second. There were 2 Eagles catches that went to review near the sideline, Justin. One of them was the Dallas Goedert one, which I believe that was the one that stood. And the other one was I think it was the A.J. Brown catch. It may have been on this drive, if I'm not mistaken, that I'm mentioning, that they overturned. So before I continue to the fourth quarter here, because that was all the score in the third, did you have any thoughts about those 2 reviews on the Eagles catches? Did you think both were fine in terms of what the final call was, or did you have any different opinions?
I thought both of them should have probably been no catches. I'm not sure. I think they challenged the Dallas Goedert one, correct?
Yeah, both of them got challenged, yeah.
And no, only one was challenged. The other one was outright overturned, I think. Did they do 2 challenges? I don't remember there being 2
No, my bad. So it was the A.J. Brown one that they had to review, that they had to look over, and I think it was the Dallas Goedert one that Kansas City challenged, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, either way, I didn't think either one was a catch, but yeah, I mean, I don't really think they had an effect on the game. I think both drives ended up being sustained.
Yeah,
after the fact.
No, I was just asking because I was wondering, because I was with you. I felt the A.J. Brown one, I think it was obvious that he didn't have complete control. Goddard was really weird because I thought
I lost the challenge.
Yeah. So it was a really weird one to say the very least. But fourth quarter we go, and Rick kind of mentioned it, but this is where the role players of Kansas City really shined and really performed. Little genius play calling by the Kansas City Chiefs in terms of Kadarius Toney getting his catch. He was basically wide open on this one. A very similar one with the Sky Moore, a couple, just literally less than 3 minutes of game clock later for KC and what they were able to do. This Kansas City defense also stepping up when it mattered most in the second half. It was a field goal by the Eagles on their first possession, a punt on their second one, and that punt led to the return for the Kansas City Chiefs that Rick brought up. It was Kadarius Toney for 65 yards. 65-yard punt return. Longest punt return in Super Bowl history. That sets up the touchdown by Sky Moore. So, boom, we have a Kansas City Chiefs lead. Philadelphia Eagles, though, they marched back down the field. They had a couple big plays in this one. There was A.J. Brown on the big 3rd and 4. He was able to get 11 yards on that one. 45 yards to Devontae Smith at the 47-yard line. That was big. And then Jalen Hurts, 2-yard rushing touchdown, and then rush for the 2-point conversion. Octopus, ladies and gentlemen. That's a term I actually I don't know if it was learned or relearned, but getting both the touchdown and the 2-point conversion being the same player, that's an octopus. Again, if you bet on that to happen, I don't know if you could just bet for it to happen in general or maybe a specific player. Hurts probably would have been one of like the 2 guys I would have bet on if I had to have place a bet on that. It would have been him or I think Travis Kelce, because I think Travis Kelce would have been like the next guy I would have guessed to probably get the octopus. It would have been one of those 2. So Jalen Hurts gets it. We got a tie game, and then things happen. The field goal drive by Kansas City. They're driving. It looks like that the Eagles get a stop on 3rd and 8 with just under 2 minutes left. So that's the scenario. Just under 2 minutes, 3rd and 8. Mahomes errant pass in the direction of Juju Smith-Schuster. You think, oh, that's it. They're going to kick a field goal. Philly's going to go, and they're going to get a chance to tie this game potentially, because the Chiefs probably would have made the field goal no matter what the situation. I know Butker missed one early in the game, but he probably would have made that one. It would have been 38-35 KC with 2 minutes left for the Eagles to try to make something happen with. But that was not the case, ladies and gentlemen. So that begs the question. Was it defensive hold? Or actually, no. Let's not ask that question. Yeah, technically
it was like a ticky-tacky one, but it was.
So this is the play that's going to get talked about, I think, a lot, at least in the short term. I think in the long term, like 5-10 years from now, we're not going to think about that defensive holding just. So we're going to think, wow, this was an amazing Super Bowl, 38-35, bubble. Like Jalen Hurts performed.
Think about it.
Exactly. Well, yeah. I'm saying NFL plays in general. But before we finish the discussion about the Super Bowl, I do want to talk about this. And of course, I mean, the reason I talk about this is that I have to bring up the little ticker itself, because I mean, that was amazing. That was an amazing play right there. Shout out to Podfather Rick for coming up with the catchy titles that we have on these tickers in this one. But in regards to that hold, obviously it was a defensive hold, Justin. It, in theory, was the right call on paper, but a lot of conversation about it. Do you what is your opinion? Not on the call itself. I'm not asking you why they call it like it's not a call, et cetera, et cetera. Like the discourse about the call, it's been heavily talked about in NFL circles on NFL Twitter. People the day after the game, days after the game. What are your thoughts about the call, or even the whole discourse around the idea of the call itself?
Look, it was a ticky-tacky call. It was. And you don't want the Super Bowl to be dependent, decided on that. Although I guess you could make the argument that if the game was decided on anything, it was the fact that the Eagles could not stop the Chiefs the entire second half. I mean, if you really think about it, the only drive they didn't score a touchdown is that drive where they scored a field goal, and Jerick McKinnon had the ability to just walk in at one point. So, look, do you want it to end or to seemingly end that way? No. But they've been inconsistent all year on penalties like that. It's an issue that has persisted throughout the NFL. And look, we spoke about it before the Super Bowl even happened. Someone asked Roger Goodell, "Hey, how do you feel about the officiating this year?" And when he said it was great, everyone was like, "What?" So look, it's not the end of the world. Like I said, I think it was still a good game. I still think that the team that deserved to win because they played better in the second half won. It's unfortunate, but even the defensive back himself, even Bradbury came out and said, "Look, it was a hold. It's not what I intended to do." Like, obviously I wasn't, but I was hoping they wouldn't call it. They called it. The Eagles still had some time left at the end of the game, albeit just for a Hail Mary, but it is what it is, man.
Agreed. No, so my take on the call, like in a similar way, I felt no matter what, Kansas City would have finished the drive off in some way, shape, or form. They were going to score, and they probably were going to win with how they played in that second half. I don't think that affects it. What my thing is, and I understand that you bring up the point about the inconsistency of it, and I think for a lot of calls like this, they are subjective. But this was my thing: is that as the athletes go, when the officials are calling the game a certain way for the first 58 minutes, it's a 60-minute game. When they're calling the game a certain way for the first 58 minutes, I know Rick kind of mentioned it in his thing. That's the last 2 minutes of the game. And you're going to switch up your standard of what you're going to call. I have a bit of an issue with that. And I say this as someone who, as a hockey fan, the regular season and the playoffs are called in two totally different ways. We've seen in the past, you could basically commit close to manslaughter in the playoffs in terms of the kinds of hits that guys are able to get away with. So to me, when it comes to the NFL, I know it's one game. The refs did an amazing job, I think, throughout the contest. I think they did amazing. Like we talked about with the catch reversals, I think, even though I probably thought the Goddard one could have been overturned, I think it was the right call to at least overturn the A.J. Brown one. I think for the most part, they were good throughout that game. They let them play, basically. They kind of just like put their whistles away. I think if it was only egregious or had it been anything more egregious, I think that's what they would have called. The refs did not get in the way at all. And again, I say this as I don't think that penalty nearly affected the result in terms of I think the Eagles would have scored next play. But from the perspective of guys, and yes, I know James Bradbury admitted it, but you also know in his mind, be like, was that really the first time he probably did that in that game? Was that the first time that any of the Eagles corners did that in the game? Did the Chiefs not do that at all in the game? Like, the thing with holding is that it's so subjective. What is a hold and what is not a hold? Hand play at the line of scrimmage between those guys, hand play in the trenches between the offensive lineman and the defensive lineman, which I think there were no holding calls on either side for the offensive lineman, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe just delay of games, which I will say, Philadelphia, you want to talk about calls? You guys got lucky. They could have been called for delay of game like 4 or 5 times in this one.
They could have upheld that second defensive touchdown.
Yeah. So, like, I from the perspective of it was the quote unquote right call to make, I get that. But again, like my thing, and I understand this, to where you can't switch up how you're calling the game in the last 2 minutes. Call it a certain way, keep doing it consistently, and we're good. Or it should have been called that way the whole game. Like, I just have a problem with suddenly the last 2 minutes they're switching up what they're doing. I've never really been a fan of that. If you're calling the game a certain way for 58 minutes, because again, like these guys, this is why I said with the Osai thing a couple weeks ago between the Bengals and the Chiefs, like the kid is running to try to get to Mahomes. I'm not saying it wasn't the right call, but it obviously was. But He's running as fast as he can to try to get Mahomes while Mahomes is still in bounds. Mahomes steps out of bounds. He can't stop himself. Like, these guys are conditioned throughout the course of a game to play as what the officials are calling. So for the officials to switch up how they're calling it, their standard for what they're going to call, that's a problem. That's a legitimate thing that I don't think should be discounted. At the end of the day, again, I agree with the sentiment. I don't think it makes a difference. I think the Chiefs win no matter what. But the fact that we have to discuss it, this is my issue. The fact that we have to have this conversation even, to me, is the issue. To me, it shouldn't have been called from the perspective of, like, this is the hindsight 2020, like, Roger Goodell perspective. Like, you say Roger Goodell made the comment about the refs. If that holding wasn't called and we get an actual finish and the Chiefs win or the Eagles win or whoever the hell wins, like, amazing Super Bowl. It's like, hey, you know what? Maybe Roger Goodell was kind of right. They called it the most important game of the year. They called it perfectly, but they didn't do that. Like, at the end of the day, whether you wanted the Chiefs to win or not, whether you wanted the Eagles to win or not, whether, like, it doesn't matter. Was that game called perfectly? I can't say that. I can't. It was called great for 58 minutes. The last 2 minutes matter. What?
I mean, until fouls are reviewable, like, what are you going to do?
Keep it consistent. That's all I'm saying. Either call it or don't call it throughout the course of a game and throughout the course of a season. And I know that's hard. That's hard, but at least in a game, if you've seen that play happen, Justin, if you've seen a play happen 5 times and you didn't call it, why are you calling it on the 6th play? Like, it makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense. If you've seen that play multiple times in the game and haven't called it, why are you calling it in that moment? I think it warrants that question.
Well, you also have to realize, just because you saw it doesn't mean the ref saw it. You have a different vantage point. People don't understand. The refs are seeing things in real time without replays. There's no way that they're going to be able to see things the way that you are at home.
No, but the thing is that they didn't they didn't throw the flag immediately. They threw the flag after Mahomes was pointing at it. Like, there was 3 to 5 seconds of Mahomes and the Chiefs pointing it out, and then they finally threw the flag. Like,
they knew that there was a hold there. It's what it is. Just because there was a delay.
No, but why are you not calling it? Why are you calling it then and not throughout the entire game? That there is no way in an NFL game that was the only time a defensive back committed holding. I'm not saying the Chiefs did it. I'm not saying the Eagles did it before. They both probably did. Why are you calling it one way for 98% of the game and the last 2% of the game you're changing it?
I like I said, it's not impossible for there not to be defensive holding in a game. It's happened before.
But no, you're not understanding what I'm saying. You've called it a specific.
I'm understanding. You're saying that it definitely happened before, and they didn't call it every single.
Why are they calling it then?
But you didn't. But how do you know it happened every single play before, Jurgen? I didn't.
Hold on, I didn't say every single play. I'm saying, did it probably happen before that specific play? Yeah, it probably did. It's the NFL. The Chiefs and Eagles offensive line, both of them, because Frank Clark and Chris Jones were great, and the Eagles defensive line didn't step up. Like, you're telling me that both offensive lines went through the entire game without a hold? I mean, probably because there are really good pieces on that side, but they probably could have called a hold, and they didn't. So the same with the defensive backs. Is that the first time that they probably tugged on Juju's jersey? Probably not. But what I have a problem with the last 2 minutes of the game get called differently than the first 58. I think.
Would you hold on? Would you rather the game be decided on a call that they made, even though they didn't make the call earlier in the game, or would you rather the game be decided on a missed call?
Call the game the same way you've done it.
I understand what you're saying, man, but you can't tell me that they were definitely ignoring all the holding calls before that, and then just because it happened just then, they decided to change their mind. That's a ridiculous take, in my opinion, Jerk.
I'm not saying they. They had to have changed their mind.
If they changed the way they were calling the game, it seemed pretty consistent to me. I think that there was missed calls on both ends. I think there was issues, but I also don't think that one team got the advantage over the other.
No, but I'm not saying one got the advantage. I'm saying they called it a specific way the whole game, except for the last.
I'm saying I don't see the change at any point in the game. It was a hold. They called a hold. It's not like they were ignoring certain things beforehand and decided to stop ignoring them later on in the game.
No, but Justin, you're telling me in a 60-minute game, there's only one time a hold happened. I'm sorry, but that's bullshit. There had to have been other holds in that game that they didn't call. There's no way in an NFL game.
There's never been a game that there wasn't a holding.
There have been, but why in this one you call one when there probably were more?
It was a holding call on a major play at the end of the Super Bowl, man.
Yeah. But
What are
this
they
is
gonna
my
do?
thing.
The
But
defensive back came out and said that was the right call. What are we complaining about here?
you want him to be, but we say that, and they're like, okay, he said, but if he said like, no, I didn't, like, if he tries to battle against it, we would call him a sore loser and be like, no, dude, you called it. Like, he probably just took the higher road.
I don't know, man. That is one of the most arguable calls I think I've ever seen. I agree. It is a ticky-tacky call. He barely had it. He didn't even really impede the runner.
That's why I think he didn't. Juju wouldn't have caught that.
Okay.
He would not have caught that.
I'm not disagreeing with you. It was still a penalty.
Yeah. Oh my God. like so
So
many
what are we
plays
arguing
can be
about?
called a penalty.
They called the game fairly consistently. We had a group chat that said, hey, I think they've called the game pretty consistently up to this point.
And then they ruined the consistency with that play.
I don't understand what you're getting at this point, man.
They called the game a certain way consistently. They did. I gave the refs credit. I said first, however many minutes of the game, they called it great. I do not believe, bro. This NFL, we've been watching NFL for too long. Yes, there have been games with no holding calls. There have also been games with a bunch. There have also been games with a certain amount. I do not believe that was the only holding, like only incident moment of holding that happened. That's the only one they called. And I think that warrants why are they calling it in that moment?
I disagree.
Okay, we agree.
I didn't see it. I mean, I didn't really see any holding throughout the game. There wasn't very many plays where I said, "Oh, that's clearly a penalty. They should have called that." I don't remember doing that once during the Super Bowl.
But
plays. I never turned around and said, "That's a hold." I do that a lot.
But we see but you just said the vantage point. They showed the replay of that. We also see the game in real time. We can't always go back. I'm
seeing it in slow motion several times after the fact, and I didn't see any extra holding that they missed. How are you saying that because they called this one, they're calling the game differently? That makes no sense.
In that play, in that moment, yes, they did compared to the rest of the game.
Okay. I don't know.
Like I'm saying, I don't care about the fact that the Chiefs and the Eagles won. I've already said I think the Chiefs were winning.
No, I know. I didn't think you were taking a side. I just don't understand the take that you have now. Like I said, we watched the game in an easier vantage point with more replays and in slow motion. I don't remember seeing any holding calls that they missed.
Hold on, more replays. More replays is completely false because at the end of the day, the NFL is a multi-billion-dollar organization. They can afford to give their refs the best technology possible, so where they can
replay. You cannot replay a play for penalty. It doesn't matter. Can't be done. It's not allowed.
Probably should. In that moment,
we're gonna have 5-hour games. Then look, I don't. I'm
not saying every play. I'm saying if we're gonna call the last 2 minutes different, then let's have the last 2 minutes like a play like that.
There's a reason that this was an issue in the past. I mean, look there was a full season where you were allowed to challenge defensive pass interference. I agree. I thought it was great. I think that the NFL handled it poorly and squashed it by not calling it.
Well, I think what they did,
overturning it.
I think with the defensive pass interference thing, I think the NFL only made it reviewable. This is my thing personally, because I have zero faith in this league. I think they did it just as a stick in the craw to everyone that wanted it to be reviewable, and they made it a point to we're never going to overturn it.
That's what I'm saying.
Because how many did they overturn that season? 2, maybe 3? Like
I don't know. I remember it being a joke though.
But yeah, it was. It was.
And I think they should certainly make roughing the passer reviewable.
Well, yeah, because they just don't know how to call
it. And it shouldn't. And I'm not saying it should be a challengeable play. I'm saying that there should be people in New York reviewing it and saying, okay, that clearly was not roughing the passer. What's his name on the Chiefs, who clearly strips the ball out of the quarterback's hands, doesn't even land on him, and gets up and runs the other way. That is not roughing the passer. Okay. Just because it looks hard does not mean it's roughing the passer hit. I mean, they nailed Mike White right in the ribs.
They cracked his.
It was a great tackle. It shouldn't have been roughing the passer, and it wasn't. Yet somehow the Jonathan Franklin Myers, I think it was, hit on Mac Jones. That was a pick 6 in the first Jets-Patriots game. Was roughing the passer because the ref quote said, "You hit him too hard." There's no consistency. I agree. Season long. I get that. I don't see it in this game.
Hey, just be better. That's my thing to the refs. Just be better.
I mean, that's a different story, but yeah,
that's a different story. In that portion, we can all agree the refs should be better. So
it's not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. If you don't want to do it, then don't do it. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, it's a thankless job.
Get it right, and we will thank you. All right, let's move on from that and finish the game. The Hail Mary did not go well. The Hail Mary, you could say, hurt all of our eyes. But what was that Jalen Hurts throw, by the way? Like, he came nowhere near like converting that Hail Mary. I guess. I mean, I know he wasn't like. I know he's not a gunslinger, but like that came
It's
nowhere
funny
near.
because I think that he would have been like viewed as like such a different quarterback at the end if he didn't have that like lackluster throw down the like. He played excellent in that Super Bowl.
He had 3 rushing touchdowns.
Quelled, in my mind, he quelled all doubt on whether or not he's a starter in this league. He had an excellent run this entire season.
Yeah.
Except for the time he was hurt, obviously. He played really well. Still hurt in the Super Bowl, by the way. Still had issues with his shoulder, even though I think they took him off the injury report, which is BS. But he was like viewed like he was like, oh, he played excellent. If he like throws that ball like 60 yards and it's a beautiful Hail Mary and they don't catch it, that's one thing. There's going to be people questioning his arm now.
Yeah.
There's going to be questions now. Well, he can't throw.
Yeah.
like he hasn't had like several 40-yard touchdowns and 60-yard touchdowns to AJ Brown and Devontae Smith all year long. But now, because of that one Hail Mary at the end of the game where it didn't even matter.
Yeah.
They weren't going to do it.
Yeah, they were.
It was like
even if hypothetically an Eagles receiver had gotten back and gotten the ball, they weren't going to score on that. Kansas City's entire
doesn't matter. Even if they got the ball and they made it, they said, "Well, Jalen Hurts isn't a good quarterback. That was all receiver play," and it would have been. They wouldn't have been wrong.
You're not wrong.
Well, they would have been wrong that Jalen Hurts is not a good quarterback. He's the top 10 quarterback, but he's maybe top 10. Now, I'm not saying
no, you can argue it.
Yeah, we'll have to. That'll be an episode. I'm excited for that episode.
Oh yeah, for sure. We're gonna have fun in the off season. We're gonna have fun.
Yeah, it's interesting, but you could make the argument that Jalen Hurts was the better quarterback for 60 minutes.
I think he earned his. I think he's earned the contract extension that Philly has had to make the decision on. Because coming into this year, I feel like Philly made his front offices. They should be forethinking.
This is his 3rd year, right?
Yes, and he was a 2nd round pick.
So
no 5th year option.
Oh, so there's not so after this year he needs an extension?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So he's entering the last year of his deal, and because he was a 2nd round pick, there's no 5th year option to get to play with. I feel like Philly entered this season with the mindset of depending on what's going to happen with Jalen Hurts, like his performance and how far they get combined is going to be the biggest factor of A, are they going to extend him, and B, how much is he going to earn on this extension now? Like I agree with you. I think to your point, I think Jalen Hurts earned his contract extension with this performance this season.
Look,
I think
where are you going to get a quarterback of that caliber at this point?
You got
You're going to give up a ton of assets to trade. You have arguably one of the most well-together put teams in the entire NFL. You're going to lose some guys. There's some guys in the secondary you'll need to replace. You just
James
lost
Bradbury, funny enough, is one of them.
You just lost 2 coordinators, but your core, especially offensively,
is there. Yeah.
You'll probably need to replace Kelsey. I think he'll probably end up retiring.
Well, that's what Cam Jurgens is there for. Jason Kelsey told them specifically to draft him. He is the center of the future. He just played a guard this year because he played so good in camp that they're like, okay, we can't just sit him on the bench. We need to at least play him. So
yeah. So then you'll still need to replace an offensive lineman.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll need another running back or two. It can't hurt to add a good running back, although Miles Sanders played well. The backup guys, Gainwell and
Boston
Scott played well this year. But you have a young core there.
Yeah. And you also have a high 1st round pick this year because of the Saints. Like you can add to that core if you
could trade back and you could add depth. Yeah. You could add more picks. Howie Roseman has been a wheeling and dealing GM for a while now, and he's killed it, dude. 2 Super Bowls in 8 years?
No, even less. Like when was that? When was the Patriots Super Bowl?
6 years, I think, actually.
Yeah, but 6 or 7, I think.
2017, I think it was.
Probably.
I actually have them here.
Oh, there we go.
I thought I had them here.
Yeah, don't worry about it. At the end of the day, 2 Super Bowls within like a 6-7 year span. That's pretty good. And 1 win, and then 1 like this close to winning it. Like that's pretty good. That's closer than what Philly was ever before then. So
2018.
Oh wow. So that's 2 years before the Chiefs won theirs.
6 years. Yeah, it was exactly 6 years.
So 2 Super Bowl appearances in 6 years, a win, some division titles in there. It's pretty good. Like
Yeah,
they have a core. They have a squad.
Oh yeah, he's I wouldn't be surprised if they make some moves again. But I wouldn't be surprised if they sit pat. He's drafted well.
Yeah.
Jordan Davis was a great pickup for them in this offseason. There's a lot of hope for Philly.
Yeah, there is. And also the fact that
we're there. This is a team that's going to be good for a long time, especially if they can keep that team, together.
Well, also the NFC is wide open still. Like, I don't think we're talking like again. This is for later down the line. The NFC is pretty wide open.
Well, look, you also have to remember that the other 3 teams in the NFC East are probably going to be pretty different teams next year. I mean, there's a good chance that Zeke is not a Cowboy next year.
Yeah,
his contract, there's no guaranteed money after this past season.
Oh, they have to cut him.
They have, I think Pollard is a free agent. They're going to have to franchise tag him. Dalton Schultz wasn't great down the stretch. He was a disappointment in the playoffs. Maybe they move on from him. There could be differences on the Giants. They're going to need to change a lot of the receivers. Saquon and Daniel Jones are both free agents. You know what I mean? What are the odds they bring back both? I would think that they're going to try. But, hey, how much are you going to devote to an offense that got slaughtered in the divisional round by the Eagles? You know what I mean? Someone you still have to play twice a year.
And probably have to meet up in the playoffs.
Yeah. What's going to happen with the Commanders?
Sam
Howell really going to be your quarterback of the future? I know he played good in that one game.
Yeah, that's the thing. One game. It's like
one game. And guess what? It was against the Cowboys team that didn't want to be there.
Yeah, they didn't care.
They didn't care.
That game, that game, the Cowboys cared so little about it that led some people to pick them.
Weird because they were really still in it for the number 1 overall seed.
Right.
I don't know why they would lay an egg there, but I mean, it was clear in the second half. They were like, "Word, we screwed up the first half. We're not going to play."
Yeah, so it's certainly interesting. Like, things are wide open, like you mentioned with the Eagles. Jalen Hurts probably earning himself a very nice contract extension. But you want to talk about quarterbacks who have been paid recently for Super Bowl wins. Cha-ching, cha-ching, Patrick Mahomes. Remember after that first Super Bowl, $500 million extension? Well, I think that extension's paying off, Justin. Do you think so?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I don't know yet because I would think for $500 million, they expect more than one Super Bowl.
Fair enough, but at the same time, getting back to the Super Bowl, winning it once again, pretty good. Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, as we talked about like the game, we talked about the Eagles now, which is really weird considering the ticker the entire time. But ladies and gentlemen, MVP Patrick Mahomes has been the guy. Regular season MVP for the second time in his career, Super Bowl champion now for the second time, and Super Bowl MVP for the second time. Breaking the quarterback MVP curse, because I think the last 7 or 8 quarterbacks who won the MVP award didn't win the Super Bowl. Breaking the MVP curse overall, because the last person to win the Super Bowl in and of itself was, I think, Kurt Warner's first Super Bowl with the greatest show on turf. So it's been a long time when it comes to the MVP in general winning the biggest trophy at the end of the season. But Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs do that. MVP curse broken. Coming back from down 10 points. Good stuff. Just overall, the Kansas City Chiefs, they broke a lot of things, including the Eagles' backs in that game. And they are once again Super Bowl champions for the second time. I bring up MVP Pat because Money Boy Mahomes, second MVP, second Super Bowl MVP, led the league in passing yards and passing touchdowns this season. I believe he's the first quarterback ever to have every single one of those in one season in terms of MVP, Super Bowl MVP, leading the league in yards and touchdowns all in 1 year. I think he might be the first. I can't think of a quarterback that's done all 5 of those things in the same season. So,
no idea.
Yeah, we'll just assume. But in all seriousness, and we're not going to spend too much more time on this because we do want to move on to a little bit of offseason talk before we end things off. Mainly, ironically, for a very quarterback-centric last half of the show here. But, we're not going to get too much into it. Maybe this is, again, like an off-season episode where we discuss this, maybe coming with the Kansas City Chiefs. But Patrick Mahomes, and now he's won his second championship. He's got all these awards and accolades right now. He's only 27, which I don't know if that was ever mentioned during the game or following the game, guys, but Patrick Mahomes is only 27 years old. The only thing I've heard less about is that Jason Kelce and Travis Kelce were brothers playing the Super Bowl. I did not hear that at all going up into the game. I don't know about you guys.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, right. But Mahomes, all these accolades, now just 27, and still a lot of future to go. I'm not going to ask you the question of can Kansas City repeat, Justin. I think realistically the answer could be yes, they could. I think realistically any champion has a chance to repeat after they've won. It's just about what happens in the offseason. I'm not going to ask you what the Chiefs' odds are winning again, because I think we can both agree they should probably be favored in the top 34 teams in the league. So I more so want to ask a question that people are going to be asking. Again, we don't have to go too much into it, but just generally speaking, the generic sports debate, top 10 quarterbacks of all time. Is Patrick Mahomes now in there, or is he close to there for you, Justin?
Top 10?
Yeah.
Well, again, it's an interesting debate because you have to compare him to some of the guys that won or before my time. But two, it's a different game. You know what I mean? Like, to play quarterback now is not the same to play quarterback in the 90s. You know what I mean? Like, for a long time, Brett Favre was considered one of the best quarterbacks of all time. He was a warrior, man. He would come in, he would take hits, he would put his body on the line. Only won one Super Bowl, sure, but like some of these guys, if they were to play in today's NFL, it's hard to argue what their stats would have been like. I mean, put the winning aside. Patrick Mahomes, yeah, at this point, if he broke his leg and never played again, he'd be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
I know you can make the argument he didn't do it for long enough. It's only been 5 seasons. I don't think we've seen
5 years.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen a guy come in and do this in a 5-year stretch. I mean, yeah, sure, there have been players that have been to 4 Super Bowls, but I mean, how many won them in a 5-year span? How many won 2 MVPs in a 5-year span? It's 2 Super Bowl MVPs in a 5-year span. So he's got to be a Hall of Famer at this point, which is probably the quickest also I would ever admit that. Kind of weird to say out loud, but I don't know if I would put, I mean, yeah, you've never seen a quarterback play this way, but you've also been saying that about a lot of these guys now. Like, he's the ultimate playmaker, but Joe Burrow is also like a quarterback that we've never seen before, like just completing passes left and right. They're setting yardage marks every year. All these records are going to change now. Yeah, I mean, he's certainly top 20. I'll 100% put him in the top 20. It's really not even close. It's kind of like, can I name 10 quarterbacks better than Patrick Mahomes? Or could I take over Patrick Mahomes? I don't know if there is.
Yeah.
This is not a question for now, Jerg. You have to.
No, I know. No, I know. I that's why sometimes we just got to go off the cuff. That's typically what your would you rather's and true or false is.
It's interesting,
yeah. All the time. So how's it feel to be on the other side of things, my boy?
I love it. I could talk like hypotheticals like that all day long. Yeah, I think I might. I think I maybe put like 9 or 8. I think, but I really, really have to put a lot more thought into it.
That's fair. Just generally speaking, I think he definitely belongs in the conversation without a shadow of a doubt now.
He's got things that only he's done. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, we're only the best of the best have done. How many people have 2 Super Bowls and multiple Super Bowl MVPs?
Very like Eli.
2 other ones.
Feels really weird to say.
Super Bowl MVP both.
Huh?
He was not Super Bowl 2. He's not a 2-time Super Bowl MVP.
Eli Manning, yes, he is. He won the Super Bowl MVP for both.
I thought he only won for
he won it for both. They gave it to him for both. You're thinking Peyton. Peyton won 2, but only won 1.
No, Eli won for both. I knew it wasn't Peyton.
No, Eli won both.
Are you sure?
I'll allow you to fact check. For me personally, he's in my top 10. Patrick Mahomes is great. I understand the conversation discourse and all the old people like back in my day, John Elway, Jim Kelly, and all that. And those guys are great, but like to your point, the athletes of today, let's just be real here, they're bigger, stronger, faster naturally. And the skill set that these guys develop growing up is different, yes, but that doesn't make it any less. And I could argue it does make them better. Patrick Mahomes is a transcendent guy where, yes, it's only been 5 years for him. This is one of the best 5-year stretches of a quarterback we've seen. 2 MVPs, 3 Super Bowl appearances, 2 Super Bowl MVP awards, a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns, Pro Bowls. The thing to me that makes it more impressive that I know people were stupidly not hounding him for this, but like some people would mention it here and there when it came to the conversation with Mahomes is, but he's had Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, he just won the Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill, who was second this season receiving yards. So one of what we agreed, the speedster like of the NFL today, dynamic offensive playmaker, like this guy that apparently Mahomes needed, he just won the Super Bowl without him. So that is a feather in his cap in terms of I didn't have what was perceived to be my number one weapon, even though I think we agree probably always Travis Kelce more so. He won it without that guy. He won it without the guy that was second in yards the season after they left. It was a pretty mutual beneficial trade for the Dolphins and the Chiefs. And the fact that Mahomes has that against you, I like how you bring up the point of like for yourself, fastest that you've probably ever said that a guy is definitely going into the Hall of Fame when he retires.
Yeah.
For me, I've only thought this about one other guy definitively, and it's in a different sport. Connor McDavid in the NHL is 2 years younger than Mahomes, and doesn't have the Stanley Cup yet, but he's got multiple MVPs, multiple scoring titles, probably winning the Richard for the first time in his career. He, to me, is a definitive Hall of Famer. He could retire at the end of this season. He can even retire today during this season, and Connor McDavid is going to be in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Patrick Mahomes is going into the NFL Hall of Fame. I don't think there's a shadow of a doubt about that. It's just all about where do you personally think this player is now? How much more can they go? And what is the limit? And Michael Jordan himself said the ceiling is the roof. We'll see what Patrick Mahomes' ceiling is. It probably is a little bit past the roof. But at the end of the day, I don't have any issues or qualms putting Patrick Mahomes in my top 10 easily. And because he's up there with the pantheons of the greatest of all time. Because and the thing that you mentioned, Justin, where a lot of these quarterbacks coming in now, and you only just mentioned one of them, but I think you brought up probably the best one. I think Joe Burrow is Mahomes' best contemporary today. You also have a guy in Josh Allen who can absolutely sling it. He's the gunslinger of this generation. You have a guy, Justin Herbert, who has a lot of the talent similar to the three guys that we've discussed in terms of the quarterbacks of this gen. And you have a couple of young guys who you don't know what their ceiling is. Trevor Lawrence just had a great year too. Who knows? Maybe he could throw 40-plus tutties in year 3. I think Rick may have said he's going to do that next season or something along those lines. I don't want to misquote him. But in the generation, but this is my thing, in the generation of quarterbacks that have the combination of arm strength and accuracy that previous generations didn't have across multiple guys, Mahomes is the best of them all. Simply put, in the playoffs, he's now split with Joe Burrow, and he has 2 Super Bowls to Joe Burrow's none. He's never lost to Josh Allen when it matters the most in the playoffs. Him and Herbert have never faced in the playoffs, so I can't really say much about that, but Herbert's only made the playoffs once now. Amongst his contemporaries, he is here, and the rest of them are I don't want to say they're there, that's the gap, but there is a sizable gap between him and his contemporaries. And whether it's the success factor, whether it's just the talent factor,
it's not a skill level thing. It's a success thing.
Yeah.
Because you put him against anyone that's currently in the league. Tom Brady just retired. Anyone that is currently in the league,
he's better than them all. He's the
got
best quarterback.
Who's got multiple Super Bowls there?
My homeboy.
He's got multiple MVPs. There's one.
Aaron Rodgers. And he might retire for all we know.
If you're taking right now, if you're taking a career, honestly, would you take 2 Super Bowls and 2 MVPs, or 1 Super Bowl and 4 MVPs?
2 Super Bowls and 2 MVPs easily. And the crazy part is, again, he's only 27.
Yeah, like I said, it's like the fastest sure thing I think I've ever seen.
Yeah. So Patrick Mahomes certainly cementing himself. He was great. I do like the fact that you mentioned, because I think Patrick Mahomes also gave Jalen Hurts a lot of praise as well about how he played. He had an amazing game. Jalen Hurts was the Eagles' offense in this game. I know A.J. Brown was good. I know Devontae Smith had his big catch here and there, but Jalen Hurts was that Eagles' offense. And he stepped up, I think, in a moment where a lot of people didn't think he would. So, he hats off to him for sure. So,
but isn't that like a microcosm of Jalen Hurts' entire life? They didn't think he was going to play well.
Yeah,
he played well. He went to Alabama.
They got benched in the national championship.
Not great. Yeah, he went to the national championship. Did they win the year when he was there?
Well, remember, he got benched for Tua.
Okay. And then what? He went to another school.
He went to Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley, and Lincoln Riley helped make him look pretty good.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden he's a high draft pick, and now he's playing in the Super Bowl. So
he was Carson Wentz's backup.
He wasn't going to do this. He wasn't going to be this good. The Eagles took him out. He was never going to start. Right. He was never going to lead his team to the playoffs. Certainly wasn't going to go to the Super Bowl. The sky's the limit for this kid too.
Yeah. It'll be very interesting to see what could be the case here with the Philadelphia Eagles, like we mentioned. But of course, Jalen Hurts, amazing game. But in this conversation, you got to take a back seat, because I put it up before. I'll say it again. When you come at the king, you best not miss. And at the end of the day, the Philadelphia Eagles, you missed. Simply put. Yep. that's how it goes. Before we have basically wrapped it up with the Super Bowl. We are going to move on from that. But before that, we do have one final question, actually, when it comes to the Super Bowl to close things out.
The Super Bowl is over. Where's my damn cake?
I hope you remember.
You're playing that.
What happened?
Did he send that to play on the episode?
Yes.
Hey.
Yeah, I was gonna say for a second I thought you forgot the context, Justin, but I'm assuming you remember the context.
No, not at all.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. All right, moving on from that, we continue the football talk. Let's begin with the early portions of the offseason here, guys. We just spent a lot of time talking quarterbacks, and we're not done because quarterback frenzy has started. Las Vegas Raiders forced to make a big move. They cut Derek Carr. Derek Carr, no longer a Las Vegas Raiders, the team that he spent his entire career with, the team that he's led to the playoffs, the team that I think it was the second or third season in the league when he had like 4,000 plus passing yards and they were going to play the Texans in the playoffs, but then Derek Carr got hurt in like the second to last game of the season. The team that he had to go through coaches like Jack Del Rio. Rich Bisaccia was really good. He had to go through, I think Dennis Allen was his coach at the beginning, was he not? Or like interim?
I don't even remember. He's been like what through at least 4 or 5 different coaches. Oh my god, he had to go. I think even more coordinators.
He had to go through John Gruden, and John Gruden did not like Derek Carr, to say the very least.
That was the best. That was the best he played. It's the most consistent he played. Rather, his best season was that one he broke his ankle.
Probably out of spite against John Gruden. He's like, I'm going to play so good that you're not going to be able to trade me because they'll make you look even worse.
I think that was the best consistent coaching he's had. I mean,
which is really something.
However shitty of a person Gruden was, he's a good football coach.
Yeah, relatively. So Derek Carr, and of course, finishing things off with Josh McDaniels is something to say the least. And now his Raiders tenure has come to an end. For more on that, we bring back the Podfather to get us started on the Derek Carr discussion here before we continue it.
Look, I gotta say this about Derek Carr. Honestly, I respect what he did. Now listen. Is he a good enough quarterback? I don't know. His numbers weren't good last year. He was down in his completion percentage considerably, down in yards considerably. Touchdowns were around the same, but interceptions were around the same as well. So not exactly the greatest year for him. But he also knew that he wasn't going to be the answer in Vegas anymore, which was a shame because, that's the team that he's always known. But he wasn't going to let the Raiders and this new direction with Josh McDaniels, the worst head coach this side of Nathaniel Hackett, get anything for him. And I respect what he did. I respect the fact that he allowed himself to be taken out for the last 2 games and then basically said, I'm done with this team, but then said, you can't trade me anywhere, so you don't have to cut me. So I think it's actually good for him. I respect a quarterback that can do that. Now, where will he go? Because you think he is going to go somewhere, and the teams are going to want to take him somewhere for sure. The Jets and the Saints are clearly the top 2 teams looking for a quarterback, I think. And both sides, could use somebody like him. I think the pairing of Derek Carr and Michael Thomas would be quite lovely in New Orleans. And the pairing of Derek Carr and Garrett Wilson would be very, very tantalizing in New York as well. But the question you got to ask yourself is, what is Derek Carr and who is Derek Carr? I think Derek Carr is a prototypical passing quarterback, which, he's not going to run a lot. And he's not that type of guy, so he's going to be a pocket passer, which the game has somewhat changed a little bit because of that, but I think that he can fit well in either mold. My one concern, though, is that, as the injuries have mounted up and as the years have gone on, are we starting to see Derek Carr kind of lose more of his momentum and focus here? And it's a question that I think he has to answer, with whatever team he goes to see. So very interested to see where he ends up. If it's a Jets thing, good for them. If it's the Saints, good for them as well. But all in all, good on Derek Carr. You took the initiative and you stuck it to Josh McDaniels, which 2 thumbs up in my book.
Sticking it to McDaniels there certainly was probably the feather in the cap ultimately. But yes, Derek Carr, no longer a Las Vegas Raider. This was my thoughts overall about the whole Derek Carr thing. I was with Rick. I agreed with Rick fully. Good for him. This is a Raiders team that for several coaching regimes now clearly did not want Derek Carr to be the quarterback anymore. John Gruden clearly did not want him. I know we mentioned that he played probably his best football under Gruden, but Gruden didn't want him. There was always talks about, other guys and that he liked other quarterbacks, man, so he could run this spider 2-wide banana or whatever the hell. But he clearly did not want Derek Carr as the long-term quarterback. If he could have traded him alongside Amari Cooper and Khalil Mack the way he did, I think John Gruden probably would have wanted to. But he just, for whatever reason, couldn't, or maybe wasn't allowed to. Who knows? But that was the case. For a while now, the Raiders have not always been collectively 100% behind him. So I was happy for him from that perspective. For Derek Carr himself, so this is the first half of the conversation, which is mainly more focused on Carr himself. I think that, Rick mentioned some of the teams he could go to. I think the Saints and the Jets are probably two of the top ones. You could mention your thoughts about that as a Jets fan here in a moment, Justin. I think those would be two of the interesting ones because you'd be walking into a situation with the Saints where there's some receiving talent there. Now, is there going to be some roster turnover for New Orleans? Maybe, and him being with Dennis Allen could be interesting. Whereas on the Jets, this is a team that, the defense was strong last year for their Jets. And honestly, if they had a quarterback like Derek Carr, I know he wasn't the best last year. The Jets probably could have made the playoffs with Derek Carr last season. So if you get anywhere near a repeat performance with the Jets defense and Derek Carr is added there, could that be the case? I think the Panthers could actually be a very underrated scenario. And I think maybe actually for me, they might be my favorite there because I think with Carolina Panthers, you have a coach in Frank Reich who now is getting his second try with an organization, as we've detailed here in previous episodes. He's put together a pretty good coaching staff overall. The Panthers defense is something I'm certainly interested in next season because they got Evero, the former Broncos defensive coordinator, who rave reviews about him from Denver. The defensive side of the ball was strong with him there. And now he's in Carolina with some of the young pieces that they have there. And then offensively, running back, we've had a previous Super Bowl question via you, Justin, that, leading rushers in these Super Bowls, they're not always the highest paid guy. So the Panthers just need a operable running game. And Frank Reich has had good rushing attacks before and good running backs as well. And now you have a situation here where, DJ Moore, I don't know if he's a consensus number one receiver around the league. He's not a Devontae Adams, of course, but DJ Moore is the Carolina Panthers number one receiver. And that's not a bad number one receiver, if you ask me. Could they use a little bit of retooling in the receiving core? Possibly. For sure. And the offensive line, I think they played better at the end of last season compared to what they did at the start of the season. I think part of it was the offensive line was young, mainly with Ekwono, who was their first round pick last year. But I think he played a lot stronger to the end of the year. I think the offensive line can still use a little bit of work because, again, a key to the Frank Reich offense was having a strong offensive line in Indianapolis. So we'll need to see that. But I actually could see Derek Carr to the Panthers as a legitimate possibility. And at least for me, that would be my personal favorite as of now. You, Justin, on the Derek Carr side of things with this situation, what are your thoughts on that? Him no longer being a Raider and now potential destinations for him.
So, I'm torn because a lot of the stuff you heard is very mixed. Some guys came out and said, oh, well, he couldn't take criticism and McDaniels tried to work with him and it wasn't going to work out because Derek Carr couldn't understand the difference that the way he needed to play. Then there's the idea that Derek Carr has been a serviceable quarterback in this league, middle of the pack, through the turmoil, which is the Raiders franchise. With how many different head coaches and offensive coordinators, he's never had a top 10 defense in his entire tenure there. He's still a younger guy. So there's a lot of question marks, a lot more than you would think a 32-year-old free agent quarterback has. You know what I mean? We look at Jimmy Garoppolo and Ryan Tannehill, and you feel like you know what you're getting with these guys. I don't know what direction Derek Carr is going to turn. Is he going to be exactly the same as he was? Sure, that might be an improvement for a team like the Jets that needed a quarterback, and that was the difference in their season. Or is he going to be better? Maybe there's some consistency. Maybe he's got a top defense now, and he starts in better field position. He's had an issue throwing touchdowns. His touchdown numbers have never been, high. I think his highest in a season is 22. You just don't know what you're getting with a guy like that. So it's kind of like rolling the dice. It's much like most things out of Vegas. It's a gamble. And I'm surprised that he's got so many suitors, although I guess, to be fair, he is the best available quarterback out there. The two best fits for me have to be New Orleans and New York. It's just going to be interesting to see which way he goes.
Okay. I will say, I think you may have misspoke with the career high in touchdowns. 32 touchdowns was his career high.
32?
Yeah, his second season.
Was that like the only one he had?
Only one he's had over 30. So I'll just go in order. First one is like rookie year to last season. So 21 touchdowns, 32 touchdowns, 28 touchdowns, 22 touchdowns, 19 touchdowns. Well, I played 16 games that year. 21 touchdowns, 27 touchdowns, 23 touchdowns, 24 touchdowns.
So he's right in the
and down.
middle 20s.
Yeah,
for
and
most seasons, which
in
is
his
still not.
career.
It's
My bad. I'm counting the interceptions. He's thrown double-digit interceptions 6 of his 9 seasons in his career.
Yeah. So I mean, look, he's been middle of the pack for a long time. I mean, he's averaging 24 touchdowns a season.
Yeah.
Is it great? No, but is it better than what we've seen for the Jets for a long time? Absolutely. It's not even close. Jumped at the spot that the chance to have Derek Carr going into last season. But
Yeah.
look, he's a guy that you can make the argument didn't have weapons at points. When he did have weapons, he didn't have great defenses, or there was an issue with the offensive line. There were years where he had absolutely no running game, like last year. I know Josh Jacobs led the league in rushing this year. Last year, there was almost no rushing game. You know what I mean? So this year, you can make the argument that they ran the ball a ton, and he didn't have any receivers. All he had was Devontae Adams, who had a great year, but Hunter Renfrow missed some time. He was not consistent.
Darren Waller missed some time.
Darren Waller missed a ton of time. I mean, their next best receiver this year outside of Devontae was Mac Hollins, who had a good year. It was a strong showing, but before this year, was anyone talking about Mac Hollins being the impact player for the Raiders? It's just there's a lot, like I said, a lot of inconsistency, and there's a lot of question marks surrounding this guy.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that I feel like you want to be good, you want to support, you want to be like, yeah, Derek Carr, but then where is it?
Yeah, right. That's the thing, because I think we could agree. Derek Carr, can't say a bad thing about him personally. He's not done anything stupid off the field. Like he's just a good dude. But the NFL's.
I'll give him a good leader.
Yeah, he's a good dude. He's a good leader. But not good guys don't always win in the pro sports leagues. They just don't. It's why like the NFL Hall of Fame, the NHL Hall of Fame, the MLB and NBA Hall of Fames. It's the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Good Guys. There's a lot of guys who've done some questionable things in all these Hall of Fames, especially the NFL Hall of Fame here. So
what? No, everyone there's great.
Oh yeah, sure, totally. 90s Cowboys, anybody? But like it's and that's not even probably the biggest one. So at the end of the day, like I say this, I'm happy that Derek Carr gets to leave that cesspool of an organization, because I'm always happy when someone leaves somewhere where they weren't wanted. Clearly, I don't care what anyone like. This is the second time with an AFC West team that we're seeing this out of Josh McDaniels, and it's just not working out. Like clearly there's an issue with the head coach, but the head coach won the battle here because who's cheaper to keep? And Mark Davis, we know, is not the most cash rich.
Well, that's the thing also, because it'll probably cost them more to keep to cut Derek Carr than it would. Like it's the same thing with the Broncos. It was cheaper for them to cut the coach.
Yeah.
They
made the cheaper decision. Cutting the quarterback would have been better.
I don't think that it was cheaper for them. That's what I'm saying. I think that it was easier, maybe the way they could structure it financially. But you've had one guy that's had no success for 9 years and a fresh guy who had no success in his first year. And when they sat down Derek Carr, all of a sudden their offense looked a lot better. So I'm not sitting here singing the praises of Josh McDaniels, but I'm saying clearly they needed to move on from Derek Carr.
I was going to say, Justin, we were about to get another conversation if you want to go on the Josh McDaniels train.
No. Again, I'm not singing the praises of Josh McDaniels, but Derek Carr clearly was not working there. I don't care who your coach was going to be. If they brought in a different coach and and Derek Carr had a similar or even a slightly better year than he did now, they still started 0-4. They still had a rough season this year. You know what I mean? Every time you thought that they were going to come back and do something good, they like spat in your face. They had a bad season, and part of it was their offensive struggles, even after trading for arguably the best receiver in the league and having the league leading rusher. And they were still a bottom half offense this year. and their
Perfect
defense wasn't
transition.
all that much better.
Yeah, perfect transition. So now let's go to the Raiders side of things here, Justin. Obviously, the big rumor is that the Raiders are going to be one of the teams that are gunning in the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes. We need to see what Aaron Rodgers, 4 days in darkness or whatever the heck he's doing, and what his decision is going to be after that.
Like a
The
next documentary.
Yeah. The fallout of that, if will the Raiders get Rodgers? I combined Raiders and Rodgers there for Ragers, so there we go. But will the Las Vegas Raiders get Aaron Rodgers? If not, who can they get to be the quarterback? I'm not asking you who will their quarterback be. It's just like that's got to be the question of, if you strike out on the big guy you're going after, who are you going to get to be? Who's your backup option? Do they have a backup plan? Probably not. So the fallout is, if they've cut Derek Carr, Devontae Adams' best friend from college. Let's assume they strike out on Aaron Rodgers. Does Devontae Adams ask for a trade? Because yes, I know they just traded for him. I know they just extended him. But why the hell is he going to want to play there with Joe Schmo throwing him the ball? One of us might be throwing him the ball next season, for all we know, if they don't get Aaron Rodgers to replace Derek Carr. So it's going to be something interesting to see the turmoil that happens in this team now that they've cut which, yes, I know, like we've talked about the lack thereof success with the Raiders. I think they've made the playoffs 2 times in Derek Carr's 9 years. Not great, but at the same time, we talked about it, him being just a good guy and a good leader. How's that going to affect the locker room? I think that's a real question. And I think Devontae Adams this is the thing. Like, the second they made this decision, they had to, or even before that, they had to have been speaking with Devontae Adams this entire time. Because if he could spoil, I don't want to call him a spoiled player, but he could get his way out somehow, some way in Vegas. I'm sure there's a path out. So, what is the ripple effect going to be for the Raiders, and who is their next quarterback going to be is the big question. Again, not asking you who it will be, Justin, but your thoughts. What directions should Vegas go in? Whether you think they should go all in on Rodgers, or where they could diverge if they choose not to go after the 4-time MVP.
I do think the Raiders need to make a trade. You have to make the argument that the best quarterback out there right now, whose name is being floated, we don't even know if he's available, because I'm not going to give the media credit. They do this every year with Aaron Rodgers. The last 3 years. I mean, last year he was a Tennessee Titan.
Yeah.
But yeah, if he's available, you should make a call. That being said, I am not really a fan of that for the Raiders. Again, he would easily be the best player to come in, but to me, they don't strike me as that.
They're not a quarterback away.
Super Bowl, yeah, they're not. They have a lot of pieces that they need. They first need to also address the fact that Josh Jacobs is a free agent whose 5th-year option was declined, so they're going to need to sign him long term. They're probably going to franchise. He's probably going to sit out. It's going to be a whole thing. So they're going to need to get him under contract. And if they are going to make a trade, I think that they should trade up in the draft. I think that the Bears should be on their speed dial, because they have good draft capital this year. And again, this is supposed to be one of those years. I know how often it doesn't work out, but if you see your quarterback there, your quarterback of the future, now is the time to trade up. You are the 7th overall pick. You have a brand new offensive system. You have arguably the best receiver in football in Devontae Adams. You can make the argument. Obviously, Justin Jefferson is a top guy. That's not the point I'm trying to make here. The point I'm trying to make here is a young quarterback would thrive in this system. And you have to think Josh McDaniels, someone who has a history of grooming young quarterbacks, for better or for worse, is going to be that. That is why you brought him in here. This was your long-term plan. You knew Derek Carr wasn't going to work out. You have Josh now. It's going to be an interesting system. Jarrett Stidham is their best quarterback under contract right now. And for however good he played in the last 2 weeks, he is not your quarterback of the future. Yeah. So to me, I'm drafting here a quarterback. I would trade the 7th pick and maybe my pick next year, maybe even a 2nd, see if I can move up to the number 1 spot. And I'm taking who I want.
Yeah. Yeah, because this is a 3 definitive quarterback draft class in terms of, I think, definitively 3 of the guys are going in the top 8, 10. The kid out of Florida, Richardson, I know has been projected in the first round. I don't know how high he's going to go, but I know there have been projections of him in the first round. But if you're Vegas, if you have put yourself in the mindset of you want to get one of these top quarterbacks, you have to trade up to Chicago. Chicago is the spot to go to in terms of asking, because we know Houston's going to want to go with a quarterback at number 2 via hell or high water. They're going to do it, and that quarterback's going to be on their back 90 times over the next 2 seasons. And you have the situation where, like, because the thing is, like, I know you mentioned like just the start of a trade package. Like, if you have teams calling Chicago, because I think Indy's going to make that call, I think Vegas is going to make that call, I think a couple of teams are going to make that phone call. Like, it's going to drive the price up. So it's going to be interesting to say the very least on like what you might have to pay for Vegas. But like you said, Vegas in the position that they have with some draft capital, you know, like this is where you need to go all in. And with Josh McDaniels, like now that he gets his pick, because you can make the argument, this is the benefit of the head coach to where, well, I didn't have my guy. You give me my guy, then I think we could do something. So now, who is his guy? That's the question.
Bears.
What happened?
I think that's more of a debate now for the Bears.
Oh yeah, and we're again future episode conversation to really table, but like
I'm gonna go off on that one.
Yeah, there a lot of future episodes we're planning here, ladies and gentlemen. But in all seriousness, like some of these questions, we're like we have to answer in the offseason because like we literally just finished the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl just finished like less than a week ago, so we have to see things play out. Like contracts have to become guaranteed, guys still have to be cut. Like a lot of things still need to happen before we truly and properly get into the offseason here. So a lot is going to be happening, but this was, I think, the first big move because it's going to affect the quarterback market because now Derek Carr is the top quarterback there. That's him and Jimmy G are the top 2. Well, Geno Smith rounded out the top 3. So you got those 3 guys. Like, what is going to be the future here with these guys? Where are they going to go? How's it going to affect teams? Like, free agency, like, this is why I like free agency happening first before the draft, because free agency, teams make these decisions, and now it's going to affect what happens in the draft. Like, you could think a team needs an edge rusher, but boom, they get a guy in free agency. Are they still going to go edge rusher with that pick, or are they going to change their mind? Like, that's I mean, they could just double down with edge rusher, but like you never know, technically speaking. So it's certainly it's one of those things where I like the fact that we're going to get free agency first, and I think it's going to be a great setup for the draft. And we're definitely going to be talking about free agency. This show started last year, Justin, with free agency, and look how we've come full circle. Well, almost full circle. It hasn't started yet, but you people get the point. So we have just about wrapped things up for this episode today. I think we talked about everything we've had to. But before we finish, I mean, guys, you already know how the show finishes every single week. At least I hope you do. If you've never joined the show before, what an episode you're watching for the first time. Kind of anticlimactic considering the Super Bowl's over. But, you know, if you are still here, this is what you came for.
Podium this week is all about the Super Bowl. So it's going to be 3 topics that happened during the Super Bowl or around the Super Bowl that I want to kind of address here. Number 3 on my Super Bowl rant, I want to talk about Rihanna. You know, for all intents and purposes, now I didn't exactly watch it. I'm not really a fan of Rihanna's music per se. You know, I have songs from Rihanna on my iPod, but that was when I was a basketball DJ, so that's just me. But Rihanna, you got to listen to me. I said the drum beat of Disturbia is the best way to open. When the lights go down, you just have like the heart rate line on the screen to the drum beat of Disturbia. And what'd you do instead? You decided to have B, because I can't say the real word, but B better have my money? I better have your money at this rate for playing that song to start off your Super Bowl set list. Not a fan. Number 2, in my mind, Super Bowl prop bets. Now, look, you can kind of think they're funky and a little wonky and all that, but why am I betting so much on how long the national anthem is going to go? You know, why am I betting so much on what the first commercial is going to be? You know, why am I wasting my time betting on things that have no real consequence and are really just push, you know, of luck in a way? It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I'm not really a fan of all of that sort of stuff. That's why I don't bet. I used to do fantasy football when I was a lot younger. You know, younger when I had more hair. I don't have a lot of hair anymore. That's because I lost in fantasy football. So there you go. So that's why, hey, listen, if you got money, save it. Don't, you know, try and bet on Rob Gronkowski making or missing that kick, which was just an absolute train wreck. And speaking of train wrecks, my number 1 spot on the rant podium this week, what in God's name was that field? I get it, you know, you're trying to experiment with, you know, injuries and all that and turf and grass, and I understand that, but the Super Bowl is not the time to bring on a brand new field and then say, all right, let's play on this. I don't know how many times ankles could have been turned. You know, why didn't you put Rory McIlroy out there or Tiger Woods and see if they would turn their ankle hitting a 5-iron from the 45-yard line and see what would happen? Because it was golf grass, right? Why would you even try that for the Super Bowl? Try it in the Pro Bowl when it's flag football. Try it then. And a game that has no consequence whatsoever, because the Pro Bowl had no consequence whatsoever. Why are we trying something landscaping-wise during the Super Bowl? The NFL is ridiculous. And now that we're done with the NFL season, it's time for the NFL draft, which means more ridiculousness from Adam Rank and more ridiculousness from every other person who thinks that they know what they're doing when we have the best mock draft last year. Get it right. Thank you, Tariq Woolen and Braxton Jones. And no thank you, Kyrgyzstan. Please stay away with your one vowel, or get more vowels, and then we can talk. Thank you.
Look, all right, I gotta agree. I found it really weird that that was the first song in Rihanna set. I also can't believe that we went our Super Bowl talk and didn't even break off into like funny bit conversation during that. We went straight to the game in and of itself. Of that, I didn't even know you could bet on what the first commercial would be. Did you know that, Justin? I didn't know that. That's the first time I'm hearing about it.
And I'm not that big a gambler, so
You're right. So that was something. I mean, that national anthem, not shocked. If anyone bet an octopus, there you go. What was the color of the Gatorade again? Was it blue or purple?
they didn't show it. I have no idea.
I know they didn't show it. No, I seen it somewhere. There's a clip somewhere I've seen on Twitter or IG where it actually like it was a camera angle, maybe someone with their phone or something. Like they did show what the color was. It was either blue or purple, I think. I forget. Maybe like dark blue or purple. It wasn't like a regular color. So if you bet on one of those two, whichever one was the proper one, I guess you won. Because if you had told me purple Gatorade was the one being dumped, I didn't even know there was a purple Gatorade. So, God. First off, hindsight's 2020. We should have guessed what he was going to rant about. I knew he was going to rant about Rihanna's performance. I knew he was probably going to mention the field. I don't think it was worth it for us to mention the field. I don't think the field was slippery, but
Both teams had to play on the same field.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's like I don't think it really would have made a difference, but like I think it brings up a point where it's like you do this for the Super Bowl, really? But I will say, Pro Bowl, it wasn't for nothing. It was Eli Manning versus Peyton Manning. It was who's going to have more bragging rights on the Manning cast next season. I think that's something to play for. But in all seriousness, there was that, and the Adam Rank shot at the end, perfect. And he texted us this, and he realized that Rick, no Dunkin' Donuts shot, eh? You're slipping. So pretty good rant podium, but we'll see if next week's rant podium will make up for it. Although, let's give the Podfather a little bit of slack here, guys. He wasn't here in person, so there's that. But speaking of which, wrong ticker. That's the show of this week, ladies and gentlemen. I still have that saved because, to be honest, if I deleted it, I'm not going to remember for next season what we called it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on this week's edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Chaotic episode, to say the least. We may not have had the Podfather, and we're going a little bit shorter than what we have the last couple of weeks. Probably a good thing, to be honest. But we still had fun. We had a little bit of fun with the games. Mind-blowing fact. Okay, Rick. We had a Super Bowl conversation. We've started the convo about Derek Carr, which means the offseason conversation is now starting to creep back in, which I've kind of been waiting for, honestly. Like this regular season is fun. Winning our inaugural pick challenge was fun. The playoffs and Super Bowl was fun. But now this is the bread and butter that we really love to talk about. We get into the offseason, and that's what I think we're excited for most on the show. It also gives us creativity for future shows in the summer once everything is done. But that is for the future. In the present, for now, we finish this off. Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much for myself, for Justin, and for Podfather Rick for joining us via video that he did this entire episode. Thank you guys so much for joining us. You guys know what the tagline is. We always have fun, talk football, and we always cause just a little bit of chaos. With more yelling recently, apparently, on the show. Well, not yelling, but more arguments on the show recently. What are we going to argue about next week? Who knows? I don't know. The Eagles are fraud. No, I'm kidding. But in all seriousness, thank you guys so much for joining us on this week's episode, and we will see you guys next week.